January 26th edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm sports editor Doug Newhoff, and I'm joined today by years of experience and expertise in Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Pateros. Let's start with a little bit of discussion about the playoffs, NFL playoffs, guys. Denver beats New England 20-18. Probably shouldn't have been that close because they beat Tom Brady to virtually to a pulp. And then Carolina pretty well wiped out Arizona, which is what they've been doing to people all season. Carson Palmer had a terrible game. Your thoughts, I guess, about how those two games shook out? Any surprises?
I was kind of intrigued with the extra point deal with the New England-Denver game. The NFL moving the extra point back this year, and that actually ended up being a big factor in that game with New England having to go for two at the end. But it's just kind of interesting to see how that rule change kind of affected a very big playoff game there.
But didn't you feel like, regardless of that, New England had no business having a chance to win that game? I mean, Denver outplayed them.
Yeah, but New England, that's what they've done, is they've always find ways to pull the rabbit out of the hat, and this time they weren't able to do it. But it just seems like in the playoffs, New England's been that team that's found a way, and this time, Denver came up with a stop on that two-point conversion attempt.
Yeah, you watch that, the drive down, I swear, how many fourth downs they convert after 3 times where he had to ground the ball basically, and then on 4th down they found somebody open, including the touchdown. And that was great, and and then moving on to the Carolina-Arizona game, I thought maybe Carson Palmer had gotten a shaky game out in the first round of playoffs because he didn't play very well in that game either. As you almost could say they won that game despite him, beat Green Bay despite him, and then then the first series, his first 2 passes, I think he sailed them over. They weren't even close, and he didn't get much better the rest of the game.
The pivotal moment there, I thought, was the end of the first half when Arizona had that big interception return down to Carolina's 30 or something like that, and then Palmer right away throws an interception in the end zone into double coverage, and just seemed like he was just very off.
Yeah.
When one of the big moments offensively for you is when Peyton Manning rushes for 12 yards at a first down. It's not exactly great high-level offensive football. And Doug is right. Brady took an absolute pounding, but Manning was running for his life a lot of the time back there. I think that's how New England stayed in the game. It was the only way they could stay in the game because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't run the ball to save their lives. And it's just interesting to me, if you put those 2 games side by side, the NFC title game, AFC, and picked a winner, it would have to be Carolina. My thought after watching them play was there's no way they can lose to Denver. And having said that, they'll probably find a way to lose to Denver, but it just on the way it looked based on those 2 games, Carolina would be a strong favorite in my mind.
And Carolina's only a 4-point favorite, and as I look at that game, I can't see how they can not win by less than about 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it looks like it's night and day. Carolina should win the Super Bowl. And you can talk all about the Denver defense versus the #1 Carolina scoring offense, but Carolina's defense will have something to say about this too, and I'm not sure how the Broncos are going to find a way to move the ball.
Yeah. Well, last time Denver went in with a good defense in the Super Bowl, that didn't work out so well for them either, so against Seattle. So, Cam Newton's playing very, very well. They have a decent ground game, if not a great one. The receivers are solid, if not great. Greg Olson's a major weapon there as a tight end. They have a very good offensive line. So it's not going to be easy for Denver to stop Carolina. And again, Doug, you're right, that the Carolina defense is awfully good. They did sustain some injuries in the NFC title game. That could be a potential concern, but they look pretty good.
I just have 2 wishes for the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't have a horse in the race, so to speak. I don't really care who wins. I hope it's a good game. Don't think it will be, but regardless of that, the 2 things I really want to see out of the Super Bowl: 1, I hope Peyton Manning goes away and never comes back. I'm done with Peyton. I mean, I'm tired of Peyton. That story has played itself out for too many years and way too much this season. And second, I want to see Cam Newton get hit by somebody the way Dick Butkus used to light up running backs back in the day.
That would be interesting. The thing was that if they do it the way Butkus did it, they'd probably get 15 yards and might get thrown out of the game now with the way the rules are changed. The other one with Peyton Manning is, and I don't mean to disagree with you, but think of it this way. If he has more free time in his hands, how many more commercials are you going to see with Peyton Manning on TV? And that's kind of if I hear one more thing about crawfish shorts, I'm going to go insane.
I can turn the volume down.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
I just, every sports talk radio show that you listen to anymore or watch on television, any sports program, it's all about Peyton this and Peyton that and his legacy and is he the greatest quarterback ever and what a genius he is. And I've had it, I'm up to my ears in Peyton. It's time for him to just fade into retirement.
And he may do that after this.
I certainly hope
Well, I'll
so.
have to tell you guys about the story, at another time with that, I was mistaken for Peyton Manning while sitting at a bar in Cleveland waiting to go into an Indians game. The guy thought I looked like Peyton Manning, and he was convinced,
He
then I
must have
stood up
been
and
in the
realized,
bar
yeah.
he must have been there a long time.
But, and then the other thing on Cam Newton too, the problem is he's bigger than all the linebackers that can light him up.
Yeah.
He's 250, 6'3", 250, and he can run and with a head
But
of
it's
speed.
just a general trend in the NFL in general. I mean, all of the quarterbacks who run, they don't get hit. I mean, a lot of them slide, sure, they protect themselves a little bit, but I've seen a few opportunities where defensive guys had an opportunity to really take the quarterback, put a good hit on him. I'm not saying do something illegal or anything like that, but you should pay a price if you want to pretend you're a running back.
I think, yeah, that's the thing. I think the league's got to look at that too. And I thought there was some kind of rule where, once they break the line of scrimmage and they're off and running, they should be free game. They shouldn't be able to allow to be slide and not get hit because you've turned yourself into a running back now. So now you can fake a slide and then, juke a guy, go around and get that extra 3 yards or whatever it is, So they're not, if they take off, they're not, and they have that ability to slide. He doesn't slide a lot, but he does some. You're not risk getting hit, really, if you break the line of scrimmage.
He's fun to watch, though.
Yeah.
He's-
Oh, yeah, he's played well.
They keep him so protected in the pocket that his receivers have a chance to not only get open, but get open 30 yards downfield, and he throws darts that go 40 yards in the air. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
MVP race not even close this year.
Predictions, I'm going with the Panthers by 10. How's that?
I'll go Carolina 31, Denver 17.
Yeah, I'm convinced Carolina's the best team this year. I like them. I think they're going to neutralize. Their loss of Thomas Davis, hurts them a little bit defensively, but Luke Kuechly is so good, and Josh Norman. I like them a lot. I'll go 28 to 10.
Yeah, this is going to be a dud. I'm agreeing with you guys. I think it's going to be a 3-score game. I'd go Carolina by 20, 21.
One other interesting thing that came out of the NFC Championship game, I mean, David Johnson, the Northern Iowa product, had a really good game, at least by that game's standards. Not a lot of offense was happening for Arizona to begin with, but he had like 70 yards rushing and 60-some passing, or vice versa, but roughly 130 yards of total offense. At times, you could arguably say he was the best player on the field. What's interesting about it is that he's a rookie, so he signed a rookie contract, which means he only makes about $500,000 or $600,000 a year.
Sorry.
Well, and he's locked into that for, I think, at least the first 3 years of his contract. Has no opportunity to renegotiate based on the collective bargaining agreement. And your average life expectancy in the NFL, if you listen to the league, they say it's 6 years. If you listen to the Players Association, they say it's 3.5. So let's just say it's somewhere in between there. Let's say it's 5 years. And he's got to play the first 3 years of his life as a running back in the NFL at the minimum salary. So his opportunity, and this just really applies to running backs in particular, but they never really have much of an opportunity to gain the type of money that is available to other players who have longer careers.
Only the elite ones really do in that case, and you look at that, that's a handful of players. Adrian Peterson, to name one.
Yeah.
Steven Jackson's still kicking around. And
There's a few of them.
But certainly, there's that risk that you will never earn to your full potential. And in David Johnson's case, you have to hope, and I'm sure he hopes beyond his wildest dreams, that he'll have a 7, 8, 10-year career, and after he gets through that first contract, the second contract is where he'll make his money.
Yeah, you're playing for one big contract.
Yeah.
If you're a rookie, yeah, especially third rounder. Excuse me. But yeah, he was good in that game. And just imagine how many times he got hit in the backfield. I mean, he probably could have went over 100 yards. There was several times there. I think Thomas Davis hit him behind when he got the handoff a couple of times for like 5 or 6 yard losses. And he took one step and he was getting hit. So yeah.
Goes to what you were saying before about how good Carolina's defense was, and Viking fans have seen this before with Adrian Peterson. It doesn't matter how good you are, if you can't take a step across the line of scrimmage, if you're met by 3 defensive people, well, you don't have much of a chance.
Very good. So Carolina's going to win the Super Bowl, in case anybody wants to run out and put any money down on that. No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Let's talk a little basketball. I guess we should start with UNI. Four-game losing streak. Suddenly, this game Wednesday at Bradley is huge for the Panthers.
It really is, and who would have foreseen that back on December 30th when they played them the first time, beat them by 36. Not only is it huge, but there's every reason to believe it's going to be very, very competitive. Bradley is not setting the world on fire, but it's a better basketball team than it was. It played Illinois State a 3-point game last week, although it sounds like it was a terrible game. Still, they were in it to the end. And UNI is still looking for some answers. And what Ben Jacobson said is true enough. They've had some very, very good moments in the second half against Wichita State, in the first half against Illinois State, but they can't sustain it for whatever reason. The offense just dried up in the second half down in normal. I mean, you went 11 minutes without a field goal. You're not going to beat anybody going 11 minutes without a field goal, no matter what else you do. So, and there were some encouraging signs with Washburn played very, very well. Jefferson got going a little bit. Bohannon was okay, but they don't, when a team seems to adjust to what UNI is doing, UNI doesn't seem to make the next adjustment. Or if they try to make the next adjustment, it doesn't work out. So they have to hope that they can get 5 people involved at least throughout the course of a game, not maybe all at the same time, but you know, some guys early, some guys late, because that's the only way they're going to pull out of this.
You know, and Bradley's playing in their home gym too, and there's kind of been a history here lately of somebody from the opposing team getting just hotter than a pistol and start throwing down threes against UNI and helping fuel those big runs that are costing UNI games in the second half. So, you know, you kind of expected in the back of your mind that somebody from Bradley is going to get a hot hand, and they're going to have to deal with that too.
That's going to be tough. And the 2 prime examples of that in the last 2 weeks are Brenton Scott of Indiana State and the immortal Justin McLeod of Illinois State, who had been hitting 23% of his threes.
Yeah.
They run him out there, and he hits 3 in a row, and the whole game changes. You could feel the atmosphere in the arena change when he hit his 3rd in a row. It was not the same game at all. And certainly Illinois State deserves some credit for that. He deserves some credit for that, for having the confidence to shoot. But again, you know, you have to be able to adjust to the adjustment. And you know, UNI started out in the zone. That seemed to work okay for a while, but then they started hitting perimeter shots and had to get out.
Very good. We'll hope they get back on track tomorrow night, Wednesday night. They really need a win. And
If not, they're looking squarely at playing on Thursday in the Valley Tournament.
yeah. Let's talk about the Hawkeyes for a little bit. They're coming off another big win over top 25 Purdue. They're up to number 3 in the country this week, and why not? I mean, they've, I think, proven that they can play with anybody at the top level in the country. This week, however, they have a trip to Maryland on Thursday, which will be interesting. Maryland has 2 really phenomenal players in Diamond Stone, I think it is, a 6'11" guy inside, and Melo Trimble, who's one of the better guards, I think, in the country. So is this where the Hawkeyes maybe meet their match?
I mean, I think it potentially could be, but I really like how they're playing. I like this team. They're deep. They got it. They, you know, they bring in their second 5 or 4, whatever it is, and they, you don't see too much of a drop off, which mystified the Big Ten announcers Saturday during Sunday's game against Purdue. They couldn't figure out how they were winning with Brady Ellingson and all these Adama Ewell and all these other guys in there, but they found it. I think there's just a great blend. This team's fun to watch. I've watched it, you know, I typically, you know, as a wrestling guy, I haven't watched from start to finish a lot of their games in many years, and this team I've watched the last 2 or 3 games almost start to finish because they're just fun to watch. And Jared Utoff, what he can do and brings, and you know, Mike Gazelle's playing at a high level, and you know, they get, and just everywhere. Everywhere you look, they're getting contributions from somebody who's stepping up. And I mean, Adam Woodbury had a really good game. And well, at the end of the day, he had a double-double on Sunday, and I don't remember him scoring that many points. But it's a fun team. Boy, they're playing well. And even if they do lose this one Thursday, I think this team is going to be a top seed in March.
Yep, they're playing well.
It's interesting because everyone likes, or has been, you know, Adam Woodbury has been everyone's whipping boy here for a number of years, and people down who cover that team a lot are really pointing out that he's been playing well, you know, obviously playing his best basketball, and what better time to be doing it. He was pretty efficient. I think he was 4 or 6 from the field. He doesn't get many shots, but when he gets them, they seem to be going down lately. He deserves credit for that. And as you said, Nelly, the blend has been good. They have you know, a couple of guards that can distribute the ball, and Utah can shoot from anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's important in this day and age. So Maryland will be a test. I think after that they have 2 games with Indiana left. the rest of the schedule is not terribly challenging. So
No.
it's easy to believe they'll go into the Big Ten tournament, if not as the champion, which is possible, but no lower than, say, the third place team.
Iowa State is playing like the team that we kind of all thought they would be too before the season. They had a few bumps in the road early in the Big 12 season, which is understandable as good as that league is, but, they're in a position now where they've taken down the top teams in that league, and looks to me like they're gonna be in that championship conversation at the end.
I think so. It's interesting, I was thinking last night watching them play Kansas, and how far they've come, or how much better they've gotten since playing UNI. Monte Morse did not play particularly well against the Panthers in Wells Fargo Arena,
Yeah.
and he was tremendous last night against Kansas. And George Niang rallied in the second half. Matt Thomas is a great story. We talked about how Adam Woodbury has progressed.
Yeah.
Matt Thomas was invisible back in December when they played the Panthers in Wells Fargo. Now he's moved into the starting lineup. He defends. He may be the best defender. He's gotten much better shooting from three, and he's always there, it seems, when they need him. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for the rise. Deonte Burton coming off the bench is another one. And it's kind of an old story, but the whole question with them will be depth. If someone gets hurt, it's going to be trouble.
Speaking of that, I just saw a tweet here, McKay is questionable for Saturday. I don't know where they're at Saturday off the top of my head, I can't think of it, but he's.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, who's ranked
I believe
high.
they are, yeah.
But he didn't play that last,
No.
probably 8 minutes last night. I don't know what the ailment is, but they say he's very questionable.
It's a
for
knee
Saturday.
problem, yeah. And that's been going on now for a while. He missed, I think, against the Oklahoma game, he missed some time in that too. So could be what what we've been talking about, that critical injury, because they don't really have a replacement for him. Having said that, it almost looked like at the end of that game, the offense seemed to flow a little bit better. They went small. Niang was nominally the center, I guess, and they seemed to have a little bit more flow, and they seemed to be able to get up and down the court a little better. That isn't to say they won't miss McKay when he's blocking shots and getting rebounds, but offensively, they might be able to get by without him.
It's just fun to see that run they're able to go on in the second half there at Helton
Yeah.
too. Once they get that offense moving, I don't think there's maybe a better offense in the nation than what they're able to do. The question for me is their defense. If they can come out and play with a little bit of a sense of urgency in the first half defensively, I think that even that game last night, that they could have probably gone into halftime in a better position.
I don't think you're gonna see a lot of defense out of that team. When you only go 6 deep, you kind of got to pick and choose where you spend your energy, and in that league, they need to score points, so I think that's a priority. I think losing Naz Long in some ways helped other guys narrow down and more, maybe identify their roles a little more, like Matt Thomas, for example. It's given him a chance to really rise up, so they've been forced into some situations that ultimately have probably helped them become a better basketball team since than they were in December. UNI women, Nick, went down to Drake and won a big game. That doesn't happen all the time, but that's a pretty good Drake team, and now they lead the Missouri Valley Conference. This week will be a challenge for them. They go on the road, I think, to play at Loyola on, Friday, and Illinois State on Sunday?
Yeah, Loyola Bradley, I think, is the
Bradley,
this
that's
weekend.
the other
Yep.
one.
And Loyola is one of the front runners. They have a really good center, and that'll be the interesting thing. Is Southern Illinois earlier in the season matched up really well with UNI because of their depth in the front court. But this UNI Drake game on Sunday was very entertaining. Drake likes to play an up-tempo style, and it is kind of a question going in there if UNI could outscore anybody. They hadn't been very good on offense entering that game, and Drake kind of sagged off of these kids that hadn't shot very well entering the game. Steph Davison, I think, was 3 of 44 from three-point range. She goes out and hits 2 3-pointers in the first quarter, scores 13 points. Charnay Lamar had a tremendous game, 11 assists. I think there was a fast break once. It's a 3-on-2 fast break. And then I don't know how she saw Jen Keitel behind her, but no-look bounce pass right back to Jen behind her for a layup, stuff like that. Her court vision just was tremendous. It was really a very entertaining game, and it was neat to see UNI's offense come alive. If they can somehow manage to do what they did on offense against Drake, against other teams in that conference, they have to be the favorites right now.
Nellie, UNI wrestling is also in the news, not necessarily for the right reason, but Cody Caldwell as well as anybody. He's been forced, I guess, kind of to give up his wrestling career because of a recurring, nagging, ongoing neck injury. Sounds like it was a lot of Coach Doug Schwab's decision to kind of push him in that direction and convince him that that was the right thing to do. He spoke at the media luncheon yesterday, Coach Schwab, and made a point to point out that Cody really wanted to try and keep going, but he thought that this was in his long-term best interest. So what do you know about that situation? And tell us a little bit about Cody and what he's sacrificed.
You know, I'm still learning more about that, but, you know, Cody, you know, it's one thing after another. He's had several ailments. This is the latest one, and you can see its effect is wrestling, because it's not the same Cody Caldwell that, you know, I saw in high school, not the same Cody Caldwell I saw as a freshman. I mean, he's getting beat by guys that he was beaten 3 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
Kyle Kutchmer from Oklahoma State is one of the top wrestlers in the nation at his weight class. Cody beat him in the junior national, or at Fargo, after their senior seasons. I mean, that's the level what I thought Cody would be at this, and it's affected his wrestling. He just hasn't been able to be the wrestler he could be. And his mentality is to go out and be a warrior and fight to the end, and I just don't think he can do it. I got to dig into it more about that decision. You know, I talked to Coach recently, and he really didn't bring it up, so that surprised me yesterday to find that out too. But you know, you know, that's what it is. They're finally at home. I'm gonna get to see him wrestle finally. I haven't seen him wrestle for I think November, because they've been on the road for like. They've been on the road for like for 8 weeks now, so it's gonna be fun. They open Central Michigan Friday night, so I'm looking forward to that. Dylan Peters is gonna be back in the lineup, so you know, it's unfortunate for Cody. It's just, you know, one thing after the other. If it hasn't been a knee or something else, it's just slowed him down. He is not the same wrestler. I'm not saying he's not the same kid. He's just not the same wrestler. I think the Warriors' mentality is still there. Just the body's not letting him be what he wants to be.
Yeah, one of those kind of sad stories about athletics that do happen. I mean, sometimes no matter what you put into it and how much your heart and soul you pour into it, it doesn't work out the way you'd hoped, and you kind of have to learn from it and move on. So,
From a distance, it strikes me that this is the way the coach-athlete relationship should work. Sometimes, as a coach, you have to step back from the competitiveness of deciding where you might score points, what might be best on the mat or on the court, and what's in the best interest of the young men or women you're working with. In this case, it appears to me that Doug Schwab made the right decision and made the right call, and that could not have been easy for him. I mean, he knows what it means to Cody Caldwell. He knows what a good wrestler means to the program, and for him to be able to do that, I think, speaks well of him.
I mean, they gave him, they went out east last week, and they gave him one last shot against Old Dominion, and he got beat pretty good, and I think that might have been the final indication that he's just not able to do it.
apparently he gets in situations where, because of the neck injury, I mean, his arm goes numb, and it's hard to wrestle without both arms working the way that they're supposed to. Okay, boys, let's wrap this up. I asked you guys to think about all the years that we've had in this business and maybe bring us a little blast from the past today. Tell us a story.
All right, I've got one from about 1988, and it goes to the lost art of dictation. Now, when you and I started in this, dictating stories over the phone was commonplace. Now, it's almost never done, except in cases of dire emergency. This time I was covering an Iowa football game at Purdue, and for whatever reason, our computer system wasn't working well. So I sat in a hotel room, I think in Indianapolis, and spent 2 hours on the phone dictating stories back. And this was something, like I said, that even was just part of the normal day, that you dictated stories in. And now with the internet, with all the things we have available to us, it's rarely done.
We didn't even have computers back when we started. And
Right.
you'd go to a Big Ten football game, and of course, we still had deadlines, so if it was a night game or a late game, I mean, you literally had to get on the phone and dictate a story off the top of your head just based on a few notes that you wrote during the game within 5 minutes or 10 minutes after the game ended. So, and then you never knew if you got it depended a lot on who you got on the other end of the phone, exactly how the translation of your dictation ended up in print. So there were some interesting stories back in those days from those kind of situations.
You know, with me, it's similar. It's the technologies went that way. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave
Oh,
the
go
one
ahead.
that Nick
Go
wants
for
to
it.
really
Go
get to.
for it.
But the technology is really advanced. When I first started, we had the VDT as a part-time VDT video
display terminal.
videos. Yeah, that's long ago. And our remote computers, you could see 3 lines on it. And now it's transitioned into the computers that's made the job somewhat easier, not always, because there's always technology issues, and, you know, God, I've had so many technology issues, I can't even pinpoint one story right there, but, you know, I remember taking dictation over the phone. Back in the day, you know, we didn't have fax machines, we didn't have email, you know, I mean, when I was a part-timer and I started in 1986, on football Friday night, there was like 5 of us in there, and the phones were ringing up. I mean, I'd have one guy on this line, I'd answer another phone, say, I'll be right with you, put it down, and I'd finish this guy, and no sooner I'd finish this guy and hang him up, it would start ringing, and I'd be taking this guy, and the same thing, and, you know, that's what I remember most. You know, nowadays, you know, most of our stuff is email, or very few phone calls like that.
I can, just in the last 10 years, I mean, I graduated college about 10 years ago. I remember social media, your Facebook, that used to be a thing where I remember it was a big deal when Wartburg College got Facebook. Like, you had to be at the school to get that, and to see what social media has done with Twitter now. You remember covering games where you're worried about just keeping the stats right and making notes on what's going on. Now you're sitting there with the computer, instant feedback on what's going on, and adding that component. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting is GPS. Like, when I first started, I was working at a small town in Nebraska. Not too familiar with the area, so I'm covering these games in the middle of nowhere, high school football. You look for the lights, because you didn't know where the stadium was, you didn't know where the field was, so you look for the lights coming out from these small towns. And then now with GPS, it's a lot easier to find out where you're going, and that makes it a little bit better to travel to some of these new places.
Yeah, we've had a lot of unique experiences. One of my favorites, for the wrong reason, it was really cold, but I think we were in Conrad for a high school football game, and back in those days, there was never any room in the press box, so our part-time reporters, at least, typically ran up and down the sidelines and kept stats, and there was no precipitation or anything, but it was like below 0 that night, or at 0, and wind chill was just horrible. So they literally had a bonfire going on the sideline at Conrad, and if you didn't run over to the bonfire and put your pen over it every once in a while, the ink would freeze and it wouldn't write. And of course, I didn't have the foresight to take pencils with me, so that was an interesting night. And then there's the story that Sully will probably get a chuckle out of, but and you know the details. I'm a little vague on all of the circumstances, but our former editor, Saul Shapiro, went to cover a bowl game for us that involved the Hawkeyes and quarterback, was it Matt Rogers?
Yeah, I think so. Would have been right around that time.
So Saul turns in a story, and somebody at our end, on the editing end, uses a spell check function that changed the quarterback's name to Chip Blower.
Yeah, Chip Blower, yeah.
And somehow that got through into print. So we have a story from our editor from a bowl game the day after about the quarterback for Iowa named Chip Blower.
Yeah.
So.
And the opponent of that game was BYU, which came out after spell check as capital B, capital U, capital Y. Yeah, the whole thing, I'm not sure, the copy does not exist anymore, which is both fortunate and unfortunate. But yes, I remember that. I don't think I was working in the office. It wasn't me, thank God.
I believe it was somebody who's no longer
he
with
who
us.
shall remain nameless. Yeah.
I
And,
remember this one.
Yeah, and it was not good. Let's just say it just was not good for a lot of reasons.
It wasn't just Chip Lower, too, wasn't it? Several other
There
words?
was a few other things.
That was the one that's
That was
most memorable. It was Major Hoople borrowed his name for future use.
Very good. Let's wrap this up for today. As always, you can catch all the action in our print editions or at WCFcourier.com, and we'll be back next week.